Welcome back, everyone. Today's story is about two karate black belt twin CEOs who thought they had seen every level of strength and discipline until they challenged a quiet single dad veteran to a sparring match. What started as a simple test inside a training hall in San Diego quickly turned into a moment no one there will ever forget. This is a powerful story about respect, hidden strength, and the difference between training and real-life experience. If you enjoy intense motivational stories like this, make sure to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing content. Let's get started. The afternoon sun was slowly sinking over San Diego, casting long golden shadows across the quiet streets. Inside a modest community training hall, the atmosphere felt different from the busy world outside. It was calm, almost sacred. Two identical figures stepped through the wooden doors with steady confidence. Ethan and Evan Cole, twin brothers and well-known tech CEOs, adjusted their jackets as they looked around the room. They were not used to places like this anymore. Their lives were filled with glass offices, meetings, and screens, but both brothers had one shared discipline that kept them grounded: karate. Ethan and Evan were not ordinary businessmen. Years before building their billion-dollar tech company, they had trained relentlessly in martial arts. Under strict instructors, they had earned black belts in karate, learning control, patience, and precision. Even after success changed their lifestyle, they never abandoned their training. It was the one thing that kept their minds sharp and their rivalry healthy. Wherever they traveled, they sought dojos and training halls, always looking for strong opponents who could challenge them beyond their professional world. That day, however, their visit had a different purpose. They had heard stories from local fighters about a man who rarely spoke, but always trained alone in the evenings. His name was Daniel Hayes, a retired U.S. Army veteran and single father. Unlike others who bragged about their skills, Daniel kept to himself. He arrived early, left late, and never engaged in unnecessary conversation. Yet, something about his calm presence made even experienced fighters respect him without question. The twins had come specifically to see if the rumors were true. Daniel Hayes was not what most people expected from a fighter. He didn't carry himself with arrogance or display his strength openly. Instead, he moved with quiet discipline, shaped by years of military service in difficult environments overseas. After returning home, life had become simpler but heavier in different ways. Raising his young daughter alone had changed his priorities. He trained not to impress anyone, but to stay focused, disciplined, and mentally strong for the responsibilities he carried every day. As Ethan and Evan observed from the edge of the hall, they noticed Daniel cleaning the training mats after finishing a light warm-up session. He moved slowly, but deliberately, as if every action had meaning. The other students in the hall naturally gave him space, not out of fear, but out of respect. There was something about his silence that commanded attention. The twins exchanged a glance, silently acknowledging that this man was different from the usual fighters they had encountered in corporate-sponsored tournaments. Ethan finally decided to approach him. The sound of his footsteps echoed softly on the wooden floor. Daniel looked up briefly, his expression calm and unreadable. Evan followed close behind, both brothers standing side by side like mirror reflections. Ethan spoke first, keeping his tone respectful but direct. He said they had heard about Daniel's background and would like to spar with him. For a moment, there was silence in the hall. Even the distant sounds outside seemed to fade away as attention shifted toward the conversation. Daniel didn't respond immediately. He studied both men carefully, not judging their appearance or reputation, but reading their energy. He had seen many types of fighters in his life, some driven by ego, others by fear, and a few by discipline. After a long pause, he finally spoke in a calm voice. He said he wasn't there to prove anything or entertain challenges. His focus was on training quietly and returning home to his daughter. However, after a brief moment of thought, he gave a simple nod. The atmosphere in the training hall subtly changed as the agreement was made. Students moved to the sides, creating an open space in the center. Ethan and Evan removed their jackets, revealing athletic training gear beneath. Daniel did the same without hurry, wrapping his hands with steady precision. There was no tension in his movements, only calm readiness. The twins prepared themselves, expecting a standard sparring match, unaware that they were about to face someone whose experience extended far beyond controlled dojo environments. When they finally stepped into position, the room grew completely silent. The sun outside cast shifting light through the windows, reflecting off the polished floor. 3 fighters stood ready, each carrying their own story, discipline, and purpose. Ethan and Evan believed they understood combat through years of training and competition. But Daniel Hayes carried something different, experience shaped by real-life pressure, responsibility, and survival. As the instructor signaled the start, none of them realized that this moment would test not just skill, but perspective itself. Ethan moved first, his stance sharp and controlled. Years of disciplined karate training under elite instructors had shaped his reflexes into something almost mechanical. He closed the distance with a fast, straight strike aimed at Daniel's upper body. The movement was precise, clean, and confident. Evan circled from the side, reading the opening, preparing to apply pressure from another angle. To anyone watching, it looked like the twins were about to dominate the sparring session with coordinated experience and speed. But Daniel Hayes did not react like a typical opponent. He didn't retreat in panic or rush forward aggressively. Instead, he shifted his weight slightly, just enough to let Ethan's strike pass harmlessly past him. It wasn't flashy or dramatic. It was efficient. Years of real combat experience had taught him that unnecessary movement could be a weakness. His eyes stayed focused, calm, and observant, tracking both opponents without panic or distraction. Evan tried to capitalize immediately, stepping in with a quick combination aimed at forcing Daniel into defense. The twins had trained together for years, and their coordination was one of their strongest advantages. But Daniel adjusted his position again, angling his body, in a way that disrupted Evan's timing. The attack that was meant to be overwhelming lost its rhythm before it could fully develop. The hall remained silent, every student watching closely, sensing that something unusual was unfolding. Ethan frowned slightly, realizing that Daniel was not reacting like a sport fighter. There was no wasted energy in his movements, no unnecessary aggression. It felt as if Daniel was not just responding to attacks, but reading intentions before they fully formed. Ethan changed his approach, increasing speed and intensity. He aimed for a more direct engagement, trying to break Daniel's rhythm through pressure rather than technique. Daniel allowed the distance to close for a brief moment. Then, with controlled precision, he redirected Ethan's momentum just enough to throw off his balance without causing harm. It was subtle, almost invisible to casual observers, but enough to reset the engagement. Evan hesitated for the first time, realizing that every attempt they made was being neutralized with minimal effort. The twins exchanged a quick glance, their confidence beginning to shift into caution. The sparring continued, but the energy in the room was no longer playful or routine. It had become a test of awareness and adaptability. Ethan and Evan adjusted their strategy, attempting to synchronize their attacks more tightly. They moved in patterns designed to trap Daniel between angles of pressure. However, Daniel's footwork remained grounded and controlled, always placing him just outside the most dangerous lines of attack. Every time the twins thought they had created an opening, Daniel would shift slightly, breaking the structure of their coordination. It wasn't that he was faster in the traditional sense. It was that he was always positioned correctly, before their attacks fully developed. Years of battlefield awareness had trained him to anticipate movement in a way that could not be easily replicated in controlled environments like dojos or tournaments. The students watching from the sides began to whisper quietly. At first, they had expected the twins to dominate the match easily due to their reputation. But now, the atmosphere had changed. There was no clear dominance. Instead, there was a growing realization that they were witnessing something far deeper than a simple sparring session. It was a contrast between structured sport training and real-world combat experience. Evan attempted a more aggressive entry, trying to break Daniel's calm defense with speed. He stepped in quickly, aiming a combination toward Daniel's midsection. But Daniel intercepted the movement with a subtle shift in angle, guiding Evan's momentum away without forceful impact. Evan stumbled slightly, forced to reset his stance. It was the first time both brothers felt that their usual strategies were not working as expected. Ethan tightened his jaw, frustration mixing with concentration. He increased his pace again, trying to create unpredictability. But Daniel remained steady, never overcommitting, never reacting emotionally. Every movement he made carried purpose, as if conserving energy for only what was necessary. The difference between them was becoming clearer with each exchange. The twins were fighting to win, while Daniel was simply controlling the situation. The hall grew quieter, tension building with every passing second. Neither side had landed a decisive strike, but the balance of confidence had shifted. Ethan and Evan were beginning to understand that this spar was not about overpowering an opponent. It was about control, timing, and awareness at a level they had not fully encountered before, and Daniel Hayes, the silent veteran and single father, continued to stand in the center with calm certainty, waiting for the next move without fear or hesitation.